All right. I will start and the people will come in, but I will just say some introduction words and yeah. So welcome to our webinar. So I need to share my screen, I'm sorry. So yeah, welcome to our webinar on ways to reduce stress and injuries in broilers during hatching. We are pleased that you have here just that. So my name is Julia Malcho. I'm the work package leader together with Margaret von Holt-Wanker from Welfare and BroilerNet. And first of all, a few rules for the upcoming webinar. Since we have a type program ahead of us, all persons except the presenters are muted. For questions, please use the chat, which you can find in the bar, usually on the bottom of your screen, and approximately so in the middle or maybe more on the left. There will always be opportunities between the talks where we will respond to your questions, and Margaret and I will keep an eye on the chat. And the entire webinar will be recorded, and if you have problems or questions, write me or Margaret a direct message or in the chat. A brief look at the program. We start with a presentation of BroilerNet and aWISH projects from Stefan Gunnarsson, our coordinator, and Simon Verlinde from the aWISH project. Then we will dive into the topic, and Frank will start with a comparison to different catching methods. Manja will present the best practice from Slovenia, from the BroilerNet, and this will be followed by a short break for stretching the legs and take a coffee or a tea. And after that, Zoe will present BroilerNet Champion from Greece. And after each presentation, there will be about 5 minutes for technical questions. And after all the presentations, we will have time for a general discussion. I hope you have a good time. And yeah, now I am Stefan. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Julia. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be having this joint webinar between aWISH and BroilerNet. And before Simon will give some presentation about aWISH, I will just make a very short presentation of the BroilerNet project if you're not familiar with it. So I will share my presentation here. And yeah, so BroilerNet is a European network that wants to facilitate and make it possible to exchange knowledge and science-based knowledge and practice within the broiler production in Europe. So what we have is a consortium of 25 partners in 13 countries. So it's from Finland to Portugal and from Greece to Ireland. And in all countries, we have one industry partner and one academic partner. And the project has been going on for 3 years, and we have yet another year to go. And the European Commission is funding this project through Horizon Europe project. And our aim is to build networks on national levels and also across the national levels. And what we aim with these networks is for fostering interaction between science and practice. And that's why we have a complete equal position of the academic partners and the industry partners. So what we have been doing is to harvest, collect challenges that farmers and advisors in different countries see as things that they want to have solved in countries, and then we collect ready-to-use innovative good practices. And the 3 themes that we are focusing on are animal health management, animal welfare, and environmental sustainability. So you can read more about the project on our website. We are available on LinkedIn, and you can follow us there. We have some videos on YouTube, and if you scan this QR code, you will reach the knowledge hub for BroilerNet. And there you can find all the good practices, the fact sheets, the videos, and all material that has been finished so far. And more will come. So thank you very much and enjoy this webinar. So please, I will stop sharing, and please, Simon.
Okay, sorry. Normally you can hear me?
Yep.
Okay,
Please.
perfect. Just a moment. Oops. Okay. Yes. Okay, sorry. Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Simon Verlinde. I'm a PhD student at ILVO, and I'm currently working at the aWISH project. So let me just quickly introduce aWISH to you if you're not already familiar to it. So aWISH stands for Animal Welfare Indicators at the Slaughterhouse, and is a Horizon Europe funded research project with a budget of about 8 million. It's also a consortium of 28 partners, including but not limited to research institutes, technology partners, consultancy companies, NGOs, and slaughterhouses. It runs from November 22 until October 26. And well, maybe the most important fact is that we have 6 slaughterhouses included in this consortium. These are geographically situated in Spain, France, Netherlands, Poland, Austria, and Serbia. The main goal of the main objective of aWISH is to develop and offer capacity to evaluate and improve the welfare of meat-producing livestock. More precisely, in aWISH, we want to focus on 2 species, so the fattening pig and the broiler chicken. And to do this welfare assessment, we want to develop and validate automated monitoring systems which measure animal-based welfare indicators at the slaughterhouse. So for instance, for broilers, this is measuring foot-pad dermatitis or hog burn. Using this knowledge, we then want to generate feedback and advice in regards to the previous stages of production. For instance, best practice guides to the farmer or direct feedback to the transport companies. Of course, since this development and validation of these technologies require a lot of data, these 6 slaughterhouses are crucial in this project. Annually and combined, these slaughterhouses process about 60 million broilers and almost 4 million pigs, generating thus a lot of data we can use to develop and validate our technologies. Of course, there are maybe 2 important questions. Why do we focus on pigs and broilers, and why at slaughterhouse? So first, the first question, well, there are 3 main reasons. First of all, pigs and broilers are the most relevant meat-producing species in Europe, both in terms of numbers, but also in terms of economic value. Furthermore, they are also considered to have many welfare problems throughout all their life stages, making those 2 species extremely relevant. A second reason is that both species have a short rearing period, making the monitoring time a lot more limited, making it easier. But more importantly, if we want to test some corrective actions, we can have rather quickly feedback on those corrective actions. And finally, since those 2 species have distinct and unique challenges, tackling these challenges can help to expand to new species, for instance, duck, geese, or sows. The second question is then, okay, why do we monitor and slaughterhouse? This is quite easy because the slaughterhouse is a centralized and standardized location within the production chain. So all animals from farms eventually come into the slaughterhouse. Plus, the slaughterhouse is standardized, making it much more easy to implement novel technologies. Of course, in aWISH, we are not only measuring in the slaughterhouse, but also complementing this data with data from other sources. So the routine inspection data from the slaughterhouse, the measurements on farm, and of course the measurements during transport, creating a data sphere of the full production chain. So this is a quick update. This is a quick introduction to aWISH. If you want to stay updated and even want to join the expert panel, you can go to the aWISH website, and hopefully we can see you there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Simon. Interesting, and I'm very happy once again that we have this joint webinar. So could you please stop sharing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oops.
So our next speaker is Frank Tuyttens, and he is a coordinator of the Farm Animal Welfare and Behavior Research at the Flemish Institute for Agriculture, Fishery and Food, ILVO, in Belgium. And he is also a visiting professor at the Vet School of Ghent University for teaching farm animal ethology, and he is a member of the EFSA panel for animal health and welfare. And in the aWISH project, he's part of the management team and scientific coordinator. So it's a pleasure to welcome you, Frank, and you can please share your presentation. It looks perfect to me. Please, Frank.
Okay, can you see and hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Please,
you for
you're welcome.
Okay, thank you everybody. Good morning everybody, and thank you for the invitation for this joint webinar. What I will present is some of the results of a study that was conducted in Belgium comparing 3 methods for catching broiler chickens. And this study was part of the PhD of Femke de Langley, and she defended with success her PhD last April. So the problem that we addressed in our study concerns the last phase of a broiler's life on the farm before being transported to the slaughterhouse. And this phase is known to be associated with a lot of stress, injuries, and also production losses. So the ultimate goal of the project was to improve broiler chicken welfare during this pre-transport stage, taking into account also the labor conditions and the economics. So these are the 3 topics we focused on: broiler chicken welfare, the labor conditions for the catching team, and then of course the income or the economics for the farmer. And so the 3 catching methods that we compared are, first of all, kind of the standard default catching method, probably worldwide almost, is the catching by the legs or the inverted catching method. In Belgium, the common way of doing this inverted catching is by grabbing each chicken by one of its legs and holding 3 birds per hand, so in total 6 birds with both hands. The other method is a mechanical, so an automated catching machine. In Belgium, the Apollo Generation 2 machine is used for that, which is an unforced automated catching method. And then the third catching method that we compared was a rather novel catching method, which addresses the kind of ban in the EU saying that birds should not be caught by their legs or wings. And of course, the standard catching method is not in line with this European law. And so this alternative method of manually catching is the upright catching method, sometimes called the Swedish catching method, in which one or two birds are caught upright, supported by the breast, and the idea is to hold a hand of one of the fingers at least above the wings, top of the wings, so that they can't wing flap. So how did we conduct this study? We conducted this study on 15 commercial broiler farms and the slaughterhouse they delivered their chickens to. And on each farm, we made agreement with the catching team and the farmer and the transporter that on each of the farms, 2 or sometimes 3 of these catching methods would be compared. And for each method, we agreed that at least 5,000 chickens per method, per flock, would be caught in per method. So in total, we had 15 flocks where the inverted method was used, 12 flocks where also the upright method was used, and 6 flocks where also the mechanical method was used. And so the assessments were done during the catching and the crating event on the farm, and then the same chickens were followed to the slaughterhouse, and their follow-up assessments were also done on the slaughterhouse. So on the farm, there were 2 observers of the research team who were present to do observations on the farm during the catching method. In case the upright catching methods was part of the methods being compared, the catching team would first receive a short training using a very visual poster. So a lot of the catchers here in Belgium and probably also in other countries do not speak our local national language, but speak a variety of languages. And so that's why the training was kind of based on a very visual poster that they could easily comprehend without fully understanding English or Dutch. So one person looked or scored at the overall flock behavior, whether the level of noise, the behavior of the chickens, whether they seem to be resisting a lot to the catching, and also the efficiency by which the crating was happening. And then another observer focused more on focal chickens, and for each bird being caught, the person recorded the frequency of wing flapping, the interaction between the catcher and the bird, whether the intended catching method was applied correctly, or whether chickens managed to escape from the catcher and slipped out of the hands. It was also recorded how long it took to fill one of these transport containers. And then each of these containers, once they were filled with chickens, they were marked. And so that at the slaughterhouse, we could recognize those containers that were trapped or caught with one method or the other method. We also, for each container, we also recorded whether birds got trapped with body parts on features of the container. And so I will go over the main results that we collected, comparing inverted, upright, and mechanical catching. First, regarding the time it takes, so the efficiency of the catching. So if we express this as the number of man hours needed to catch and create 1,000 chickens, then this is, of course, the best for mechanical catching, followed by inverted catching, whereas upright catching takes longest. If we then look at the results where the catching process was evaluated using a 1 to 7 Likert scale, we see that the level of noisiness was lowest for the upright catching and lower compared to the inverted catching. For the behavior of the chickens, there was a tendency for mechanical catching to be the kind of most positive regarding the behavior of the chickens and most negative for the inverted catching. And for the loading efficiency, there the mechanical catching was more efficient than both manual methods. Regarding entrapments of body parts in the containers, we couldn't do any statistical analysis on that because the numbers were very, very low. And then some indicators could only be compared between the two manual catching methods, so the inverted and the upright catching. For example, the wing flapping frequency, which was significantly lower for the upright catching method, and also the catcher-bird interaction was scored to be better for the upright catching method. We also scored the number or the percentage of birds that were caught incorrectly or not following the correct procedure for that catching method. And that was quite high for the upright catching method. So about almost a quarter, 1/5 to 1/4 of the birds were actually not caught according to the principles of upright catching. And that often involved that the hands were not around the wings, or that still the wrong body part was being held. So we have to take that into account when we compare upright and inverted catching. And also the chickens that slipped out of the hands of the catcher, that didn't happen so frequently, and we found no statistical difference between the methods. At the slaughterhouse, one person did observations in the dirty zone, where information was collected on the dead on arrival, so the mortalities, and on those some necropsies were also done. And another person or several other persons were at the evisceration zone, where observations were done for 6 times 3 minutes per method per flock, with intervals of 30 seconds. And so one person scored the birds with fresh fractured legs or bruises, and other person scored fractures and bruises of the wings, and another person scored the bruises on the breast. And the results here indicate that there was a significant difference in the overall prevalence of catching lesions, which was lowest for the upright catching method and highest for the mechanical catching method. When we look at the separate indicators, so the bruises of the wings and the fractures of the wings and the others, none of these differences were significant, so only the overall catching lesions was statistically different. Also, the dead on arrival prevalence did not differ between catching methods. So as said, we also looked at the ergonomics, and this was done in a rather experimental simulation study in which several observers mimicked the behavior of a catcher when they were catching broiler chickens. So this person was fitted with several markers that could be videotaped, and so there were 8 video cameras around there that recorded every movement, and all the joints of this test person could be easily seen by these kind of reflective markers. And then an ergonomist analyzed the data, giving an impression of the physical load of the different catching methods. What the result was, using various techniques the ergonomist used, can be summarized is that both manual methods, both the inverted and the upright, are physically very, very strenuous. And that is because of the body twisting that is made, the way that is being carried. And they were saying that kind of both methods, in fact, are too strenuous physically to be healthy for a person. And when differences were found between inverted and upright, the differences were often small, but they tended to be always in favor for the upright rather than inverted catching. We also asked the opinion of the catching team as well, and we surveyed those that participated in the study. So they have tried both methods, upright and inverted, and those that participated and that were surveyed after they had carried out both methods. And one of the questions we asked them is how tiring or how much fatigue they experienced when using the upright catching method compared to the inverted catching method. And a lot of them, the vast majority of them, actually answered that they considered the upright catching as much more tiring than the inverted catching. One of the other questions is how they considered the upright catching for the behavior of the chickens, and then in particularly the degree of restlessness for the chickens. And there the responses were much more varied, with a slight tendency for slightly better for upright than inverted catching. So we also looked at the economics, so the various costs of the different catching methods. One of the indicators for that is the amount of labor required for catching and creating 1,000 broilers, and then also in the case of manual catching, the forklift that is needed and the loading of the truck. So if we express all this as the total cost in euros per 1,000 broilers, then inverted catching is quite a bit cheaper compared to upright catching. So 62 euros compared to 94 euros per 1,000 broilers. If we express that to kind of a flock size, which is what a normal in Belgium of 20,000 broilers, then the catching, inverted catching costs 1,200 euros, whereas the upright catching costs 1,880 euros. And the mechanical catching is in between these two with 1,570 euros. The things change a little bit if depending on the flock size. So for example, if the flock size would increase to 70,000 broilers, then mechanical catching becomes as cheap as inverted catching, because there's a lot of standard fixed cost with mechanical catching, and it becomes more cheaper relatively the larger the flock. If we then express this, what the kind of the price premium would be for a consumer to cover this premium price for the catching, then a consumer would be asked to pay 1.2 euro cents per kilogram live weight of broiler to cover the extra cost for upright catching compared to inverted catching. So what are our conclusions? Well, if we look at from the perspective of broiler welfare, then we think upright catching is the preferred method, but we need to make sure that the total catching and loading procedure doesn't take longer. For the perspective of the ergonomics, the mechanical catching method is to be preferred, as both manual methods were judged by the ergonomist to be too physically strenuous. And regarding economics, the inverted method seems to be the winner, unless the flocks are quite large, and then mechanical catching is equally cheap as inverted catching. Because the results of our study have been framed by some organizations and some people as evidence that the difference for the welfare of the broilers between upright and inverted catching is very small, I've added an additional slide to provide more nuance to this kind of framing. First of all, we found a difference between upright and inverted catching in the number of lesions, which is 1.1% lower for the upright than the inverted catching. Although the difference was not statistically significant, it was nearly significant. And the lack of statistical difference of significance doesn't mean that these differences are not real. Actually, the likelihood that these differences are not real is only 11%. Also, the difference in mortality was also in favor for upright versus inverted catching. And you may argue these percentages are very small, they are irrelevant. Well, if we consider the total number of animals involved, in which more than 300 million broilers are slaughtered per year in Flanders only, this would mean that each year 3.16 million broilers don't have a catching lesion, and about 316,000 broilers would not die during this process if the upright rather than the inverted catching method is being used. So if we look at the absolute numbers, it becomes suddenly much more important and relevant maybe. And that is despite our observation that 22% of the upright catching method was not applied correctly. And despite the fact that none of the catching teams had experience with this catching method. Another reason to provide more nuance to this discussion is that upright catching is maybe not in the first place to reduce catching lesions, but mainly to reduce the duration by which the birds are being carried and held, and to reduce the degree of discomfort, the pain in their legs, the respiratory stress, and other stress. And it is known in other studies that indeed, for a bird to be inverted, to be held by the legs, creates an increase in the corticosterone response as a general stress indicator. And that has been also shown by various studies that have looked at the effect of shackling birds at the slaughterhouse. And various studies have indicated they're using a variety of indicators, stress indicators, that indeed shackling or inverted being held by the legs is stressful to birds. And this is more or less the same as the EFSA opinion, in which poultry scientists looked at the available scientific literature, and the Animal Health and Animal Welfare Panel, they concluded with 90 to 100% certainty that handling stress is lower with upright catching, and with 66 to 100% certainty that also the risk of injuries is lower. In addition, they state that as birds do not have diaphragms, inversion can provoke compression of the heart and the lungs by the viscera, and which might compromise breathing and cardiac activity, and that this causes stress, fear, and wing flapping behavior in an attempt of the birds to return to the upright position. And with this, I want to thank you for listening, and if there are any questions, I will be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you very much, Frank. Excellent. Julia or Margaret, we have a lot of questions I see. Could you choose two of them, because we have time for two of them? And then we will save the others for the final plenary discussion as well.
Okay, I'll just start with the first one. How did you measure catcher-bird interaction? Do you expect that application correctness could improve as the catcher have not yet had experience with upright catching?
Yes, so how did we look at the catcher-bird interaction? So one of the observers, they simply chose a focal bird when it was being caught by one of the people in the catching team, and they used a Likert scale to look at the bird from the moment it was being caught up to the moment it was crated. And after the bird being crated, the observer noted down on the Likert scale from 1 to 7 how calm the bird was and how calm and gentle it was treated versus how brutal it was treated. Also, with discussions with catching teams who have more experience with upright catching from other countries, it seems there is indeed a learning curve to apply the upright catching method properly. And so I do think there is a lot of learning and improvement that can still be done. And it's not only about the technique, because it's not so technically, it's not so difficult to do it, but it's more to having the right attitude to do it in a kind of different way, which is much calmer and more gentle.
Thank you, Frank. Then I have another more technical question about your talk. What were the conditions during loading? So age of animals, condition of the houses, was there darkness, for example, and the number of catchers?
Yes, the catching teams were like maximum 20, I think, something like that. All catching was done at night. The birds were on average almost 42 days old, and they were all Ross 308 fast-growing types. I think these are the main things. We couldn't be very selective which farms to choose because we very much depended on the cooperation of the farmer and the catching team and the slaughterhouse to be willing to cooperate with this rather controversial study. So it wasn't easy to recruit farms.
Thanks. I think there are still many more, but we can save them for the general discussion.
Yep. Thank you very much, Frank.
You're welcome.
And you will be back. So now it's a pleasure for me to present Manja Zupan Šemrov. She's from Slovenia, and she is an associate professor of ethology at the University of Ljubljana, where she teaches ethology and animal husbandry to animal science and veterinary students. She serves as an ISAE country liaison for Slovenia and coordinates National Animal Welfare Project. As Slovenian coordinator of the BroilerNet project, she facilitates international knowledge exchange, and she is also leading training programs for farmer and agriculture advisors. So, Manja, please share your presentation.
Thank you very much, Stefan, for this introduction. Okay, I hope you can hear me and see my presentation.
I think you need to click on the showing on the screen. Sometimes it's not really reacting. I think you were almost there.
Yeah, now it should be.
No, not yet. Perfect.
Yeah, okay, great. Now technology works, so now I can start. So good morning, everyone. It has been my great pleasure of presenting this work in collaboration with Blaž Benedikt from Poultry Cooperative Ptuj, which is a part of the biggest Slovenian poultry industry called Perutnina Ptuj. So this presentation aims to showcase one of the best practices that were selected within the BroilerNet project, namely the implementation of mechanical catching system. Let me just start with the core problem, especially from the industry point of view. As Frank also stressed out, there are different techniques that we could use. But although scientists are more eager to look at the benefits from the animal welfare perspective, looking at the manual catching strategy from the industry perspective, since they are really facing two main demands in relation to the catching, and these are the intensive labor as well as also the physical demand. And if you connect this also with labor shortage that the industry is facing from their perspective, actually the only solution should be the mechanical system, which would need to be humane, efficient, and definitely scalable. So from their perspective, actually the priority is to solve the workforce issue, and then of course making sure that's also beneficial from the welfare perspective, especially in relation to injuries. This goes in line with what Frank presented earlier, but let me just briefly sum up our perspective when comparing our mechanical catching system. So the bird position in compared to upright manual catching is the same or similar. The injury risk that we are aware currently is very, very similar. In regards to wing bruising, we haven't found any big differences. And as relation to the stress, actually, it really depends on the housing conditions and how the mechanical system operates, but you can find a balance and bring it to really equal level when comparing these two techniques. However, when you really compare the labor requirements, the efficiency and consistency, there's always the shift towards the benefits for the mechanical catching. For instance, for our system, you could use 2 to 3 operators compared to more than 6 people that would be needed for upright catching with the same number of birds. And also as regards with the efficiency, with our system, you could get 36,000 kilos per hour, which is nothing to be comparable with the upright manual catching. What the industry is also really eager is about this consistency during the catching process, which with the mechanical catching can be really high. So now to the explanation of our good practice. It's Italian design. It's called Gimemola. And for those who are really eager to know more about the technicalities and more how the system functions, you can go to the YouTube channel. Here is the link. I can share it also later on. You could also get in touch with the manufacturer, but just briefly. So the system works based on the vibration-free conveyor belt that can be adjusted also according to the size of the birds. It's crate loaded, so a lot of settings can be adjustable. And according not only to the manufacturer, but also to our expertise, the handling is really gentle. And the farmers, as well as the manufacturer, had a great attention to this ergonomic design aspect that also Frank stressed out research-wise. So from their perspective, this system definitely, it's not only that it's faster in catching, but it's definitely safer from the farmer perspective. Furthermore, so looking at the perspective of the farmers as well as from the birds. So considering being faster, safer, reducing lower labor cost, physical demands for the workers, fewer handlers, and so on, all this indicates that the environment during catching, it's much more calmer. This calmness can be perceived from the perspectives of the operators, but also from the animal perspective. So in our experiences, observations, they experience much less stress, much less fear, and also injury. So beside being consistent, predictable handling, definitely you can achieve much better animal welfare status. However, this can only be achieved if the conditions within the farms are really optimal. What that means is that actually, if you purchase this system, if you decide to use it, you are somehow forced to provide very good housing conditions. Especially the focus should be in providing dry bedding and flat floor. So these two are one of the keys to bring the animal welfare status as high as possible. Now, how the management works. So in Slovenia, we have purchased 2 machineries in the last 3 years. And they were bought through this collaboration model when the producers, that are part of the cooperation group, owns the machines. They share together the benefits on the slaughterhouse, the increase of production. They share the investment because the farmers, for instance, they pay only 3 cents per bird per year. So the costs from the farmers are really low. And what they need to provide is the infrastructure and the barn, and of course the optimization within. But with that, definitely both parties, they enhance their efficiency and recognition of well-functioning from the management perspective. The third party that needs to be involved is a trained operator. That person is responsible for the use and the maintenance of the machine. So the transportation, as seen on this photo, is managed using a tractor and a trailer, and it's really easy looking from the mobile perspective. However, the farmers who are willing to integrate such system should be aware of 2 very practical challenges. And one of these is that the buildings need to be designed without internal columns, because the system is wide when it operates. It has the width of 6 meters, so we need to bear this in count. And also, during the catching, the darkness is, as we know, super important. However, in the modern design houses, where there is a need for increased animal welfare with the access to the natural light, sometimes the windows with the jalousies that are not functioning properly are emitting too much light inside the barn, and this may cause a bit more agitated attitude from the animal perspective, and then the increase of injury. Further benefit of using this system is that in Slovenia, this system is currently used in 3 different housing systems that differ in group sizes and in stocking density. So for instance, for the conventional farming, we have birds for up to 19 animals per square meter. There are farmers that follow McDonald's guidelines of farming with not exceeding more than 18 animals per square meter. And we have also BTS system, which includes veranda or outdoor run, and has the lowest stocking density of up to 17 animals per square meter. And as mentioned, the sizes of the farms also vary. We could implement this system in a farm of around 700 square meters up to 2,300 square meters. So it's quite a wide range. Bearing this in mind, from our point of view, the implementation is really straightforward. It can be easily also adapted across the broiler sector. Just a brief history of how it all began. So the industry was really eager to find a way to modernize themselves and at the same time somehow avoid labor shortages. They've been in contact with multiple suppliers across Europe, from Italy, Denmark, UK, and then finally decided for the Italian manufacturers. They were really, really eager to provide a lot of evaluations on the field demonstrations. So they found them as the most applicable. Of course, at the initial stages, there were some technical logistic issues more related to an individual farms that were slowly, in connection with the farmer, resolved. Currently, there are 20 farmers that use this service. And because of such a big reputation that this service has gained within the sector, there is a huge motivation to spread out this practice. However, there are some barriers because of the infrastructures that now the industry, together with farmers, are finding solutions for this. Since the injuries-related topics are, of course, really crucial when it comes to the broilers, we haven't done any empirical studies. I cannot show you any collected data from my perspective. However, each farmer gets a paper or a document after all the animals have been slaughtered, and all that we have seen so far, I can guarantee you that with this system, there are no deviations or significant injuries caused by this mechanical loading. Of course, when compared to the standard that were set on the country level that relates to the wings, thighs, breasts, and blisters. So everything is within this standard. However, there is always some warning. Again, if the conditions are not optimal, there are cases, for instance, especially if the surface is not flat enough, that there might be some run hours. There can be also some injuries that can later manifest as increased transport mortality, especially as injured chicken may not die during the catching process, but then later on during the transport to the slaughterhouse. Looking also from the sustainable point of view, having now quite nice number of the farmers, of facilities, of the batches, this system has been proven to be very practical. It has been proven to be successful under, I would now claim, under Slovenian conditions. It can be fast to set up. It works in both small and large farms. But again, if there is a higher density, then of course the good litter quality and ventilation are even more crucial than usual. From the economical point of view, so our producers purchased, the initial costs were of 190,000 euros per machine, and there are of course some maintenance costs on a manual level and some fuel cost of a couple of thousand euros, but not more. And after being calculated all the costs that would be able to be paid off through the years, they found out that actually annual revenue can reach up to 25,000. So from the farmer as well as from the poultry industry perspective, this definitely pays off. And from the farmer's perspective, it's also very good because it definitely increases the welfare standards and avoids fights. There is one disadvantage, especially when looking from the environmental perspective. since this machinery uses diesel engine, it causes, of course, more emissions. So our industry, it's already eager to find the solutions, find the more novel model that it has eco upgrades. It goes more to the electric or hybrid options that are more sustainable. Bearing all this in mind, and also after reading updated research data from Frank, I would claim that by combining animal science with practical implementation, we are not only solving an operational issue, but also setting a higher standard for the poultry industry. By taking this into account, I really like to thank you for your attention and for opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manja. And perfect timing. And we have time for some questions for you. So I think two or three questions. Julia, please.
Yeah, I will choose some technical questions and some more the general. We will choose for the general discussion. So there is a question: is the last part of the flock birds left at the end of the cage, located by the far wall, caught by hand, or are they herded onto the catching belts?
Yeah, there is always some help needed at the very end or at the beginning. So the operators, there might be two, but also often there is a third person that is also making sure that the belt is really, really catching all the birds throughout the barn, and especially at the beginning and the last part of the barn. So yes, definitely, there is a really good chance that there is a need to help an individual birds to get on the belt.
Okay, maybe the second question: who owns the machine? Which you
the machine is owned by the industry. The industry owns both machines, and they are then, let's say, loaned by different farmers. And from the farmer perspective, this is really easy solution. They pay really low costs for the industry, and for the industry, it's a really good payback.
Okay, thank you. Maybe a third question. Were you able to differentiate the lesions resulting from catching versus the ones from transport?
No. No, that we cannot, because as mentioned, there is no monitoring of the catching lesion immediately after the catching. It's only monitored on the slaughter line, so we cannot deviate this to distinguish the lesions that may happen on these two different phases.
Okay, thank you. Maybe just one short question for definition. For small farms, when you speak about small farms, how many birds have the farms in Slovenia?
Well, the most optional size would be up to 39,000. But then it's like Frank said, we also have the majority of farmers up to 20,000 birds. So this is just the average or the most common size.
Thank you very much, and
Welcome.
thank you for the perfect timing, as well as the perfect timing by Frank. We will now have 10 minutes break, so we will start in 10 minutes, which will be 11:11. And then we have more time for general discussion, and we will definitely finish by 12 sharp. So see you back soon. So welcome back, everybody. It's a pleasure for me to present Zoe Prentza. Dr. Zoe Prentza earned a Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree from the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Bari in Italy, and completed both a Master of Science and a PhD from the Faculty of Veterinary Science at the University of Thessaly in Greece. She's currently working as veterinarian at the Ioannina Agriculture Poultry Cooperative Pindos, and she is an academic researcher and teaching. She's teaching staff members at the Faculty of Veterinary Science at the University of Thessaly in Greece, and specializing in poultry disease and avian pathology. And I also want to say that she's a champion of the BroilerNet with the good practice that has been awarded champion of BroilerNet. So Zoe, please share your presentation.
Thank you so much, Stefan, for the introduction. I'm going to sharing my presentation. Oh, maybe. Maybe I have a problem with the. Okay. Oops.
I don't think it's. Yeah, you haven't choose the right window. So
yeah.
Please try again.
Sorry. Screen. Okay. Yeah. No. Sorry.
No. Do you want to have our plan B that Julia is sharing the presentation?
I don't know what happened because I have only one screen now. Okay. Sorry for this. I'm going one more. Just 1 minute, sorry.
If you need a hand, I can share the presentation if you would like.
Sorry, I don't know what's happened. And I don't have the possibility to choose. Okay, here. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, sharing the screen.
But so Julia can share, and then you just have to say that she needs to change next picture. So please, Julia.
Now it's in presenter mode, or?
Yeah, it's in presentation mode now. Please. You're welcome, Zoe.
Thank you so much. I hope that is right. Sorry for the inconvenience. Good morning to everyone. Today I'm going to talk about a critical and often overlooked aspect of poultry welfare, the stress that birds experience during catching. This phase can significantly impact their health, welfare, and even meat quality. So what exactly happens to poultry during this process? How can we measure it? No, please go back. And reduce this stress. Here is the journey from farm to fork, a fascinating process that involves many steps. It explains that where the food really comes from and how it finally arrives to us as a consumers. There is an entire story behind it, a story that begins from placement, startup stage, growing, feeding, veterinary service and monitoring, catching and transport, slaughter and processing, packaging, distribution, and finally to us as a consumer. As we know, there is management and control in all these stages. Please?
Okay.
Okay. And alongside the journey from farm to fork, there is another crucial factor we must seriously consider: the stress that birds experience during every stage during the rearing period, and not only, because there is a stress that the bird experience mainly during catching before transport to the slaughterhouses. This stress affects animal welfare, meat quality, of course, the mortality rates goes up, and the main impact on economic outcomes. What is really stress in poultry? Stress in animals can be defined as a physiological and psychological response to external and internal factors called as stressors that disrupt an animal homeostasis or a normal physiological balance. The stressors can be heat, cold stress, ammonia, ventilation, stocking density, overcrowding, noises, lighting, pathogens, nutritional imbalance, dehydration, fasting, catching, many others. So we have to think about really seriously about this. In birds, this often, if we can describe the mechanism of stress, you can, and using the poultry as a model, you can think that often the stress involves the activation of hypothalamic and pituitary adrenal axis, leading to corticosterone release, the primary stress hormone in poultry. So the response of animals to the stressors involves the central nervous system, endocrine system, and immune system that impact the behavior, the health, of course the welfare, when the bird encounters the stressor. Please. Here is the schematic diagram of poultry pre-slaughter steps. During each steps, fasting, catching, crating, transport, slaughterhouse, and lairage. During each step, broilers are subjected to different levels of stress, which are cumulative and represent a reduced welfare level. Of course, pure meat quality, the presence of bruises and contusion, and the pure, and finally the carcass condemnation. Okay, what are the types of stress? Of course, physical stress from raw handling causes bruises, fractures, dislocation. The inversion also, when the birds kept by legs, stresses the musculoskeletal system. The psychological stress, fear from human contact, the loud noises, sudden movement, unfamiliar surroundings. The environmental stress from heat, cold exposures, poor ventilation or overcrowding during loading. And finally, the metabolic stress from dehydration, hunger, exhaustion from prolonged catching and transport times. Yes. how to measure? Measuring is the key to improving and to know if the birds are stressed. We can use a combination of physiological biochemical indicators like heart rate in case we can find we can perceive the tachycardia. Also, the body temperature can measure the level of corticosteroid in blood, lactic acid levels in blood, the level of glucose, the heterophil lymphocyte ratio, and of course the cholestokinine, the creatine kinase, sorry, enzyme in the blood. The behavior patterns like vocalization, struggling, or immobility during handling, avoidance behaviors towards humans, and the presence of wing flapping. Physical condition like the injuries, we can measure we can see the injuries, the bruising, broken wings, legs, scratches. Mortality rates during or shortly after the transport. Mainly, we can find it in the slaughterhouse as dead on arrival birds. And of course, post-slaughter in the indicators like meat quality issues, pale soft exudative meat, dark firm dry meat, and carcass condemnation rates. Yes. Okay, here the key methods to mitigate the stress are, of course, previously we also, as mentioned from Manja and Frank, I think. Sorry, we heard a lot of things that how we can what we can do to mitigate the stress. But exactly, we can say that gentle handling techniques, catching birds upright, not by legs, so supported by the breast, and of course, train the staff for low stress handling. It's good to minimize catching time, handling time, so catch and load quickly and efficiently, and avoid holding the birds in the crates too long. And proper crate design and loading is very important, as we can keep the crates in well ventilated with smooth edged crates, and avoiding of course the overcrowding. Keep them in a position in the close in shaded and cool areas. Okay. And of course, continue with staff training and welfare culture, and of course offer a welfare culture to all the members, the crew members. It's very important. Of course, using a supervisor is always good, because they should monitor the staff behavior and the handling standards, and avoiding the chasing of the birds. We can use also monitoring cameras, so in order to see to always the catching and loading areas. And finally, we can also increase the numbers of the collection points in the poultry houses, in order to avoid that the birds are in the huts for too long. As Manja said, in their country, they adopted this method. it's good to think about it, about the mechanical catching systems. This process minimizes, as said before, the stress for both farmers and animals. So we have to think also for the ergonomic and so the human welfare, not only the animal welfare. Of course, the cost and the cost effect, and if the birds are less stressed, or and all this process is better or not. From by my side, I would like to say that the pre-collection care is very important. What we have to think, even if we have to think about manual or mechanical system method, we have to think about this pre-collection care. So ensure that birds are calm, quiet. So ensuring this environment during catching and avoid, of course, the loud noises and sudden movements, unfamiliar people. Dimming the light reduce the activity and the panic of the birds, and of course, using blue lights to calm the birds during catching. Then one point very important is if we can provide some antioxidants, electrolytes in order to decrease the oxidative stress, the hydration of during handling and transport of the birds. Antioxidants like vitamin C, vitamin A, and selenium helps to reduce oxidative damage. The vitamin B complex always are essential for healthy nervous system and which help the body to cope with stress. Electrolytes, sodium, potassium, support the hydration and physiological balance. This usually reduces mortality rates and minimize carcass defects caused by dehydration and stress related from muscle degradation. Magnesium supplement very, very important for meat quality that protects also against protein oxidation and reduce myopathies. Some plant extracts reduces stress and of course the use of probiotics and symbiotics. What about this slide? Okay, it's a more than we can see. This common method of inverted catching the birds by one leg or using three birds per hand. It's very important to evaluate the stress induced by after this method, because if we are going to evaluate the stress induced and the behavior that express the birds through weak flapping and the escape behavior, and also if we are going to measure the stress with some biochemical with biochemical parameters indicators. It's we can see a lot of things, a lot of problematic, all mainly in the meat quality, because as we know, this emotion from the fear, the panic when the birds are want to escape, and the weak flapping, this motion can be interpreted as active avoidance behavior expressing for fear, and weak flapping can lead to bruises, and which consider that can affect the welfare and meat quality. Thank you very much, all of you. It was really nice experience.
Thank you very much, Zoe, for a perfectly timed presentation. And now there will be some option for first some technical questions on Zoe's presentation. So, Julia,
Yes.
you see?
Just checking the technical questions. I think.
Yeah,
there's the last
and
one.
its text ends with a question mark, not just comments.
Yeah. In what time window antioxidants, electrolytes should be provided before catching? Do you have a
What
time?
kind? What kind?
Time window.
It's better to some days before the catching, not only a few hours. It's better to introduce them to supplement with electrolytes at least 2 days before. So to prepare for catching.
Maybe here. For how long can the national sternal and breast movement be restricted during upright catching before critical changes in blood parameters occur?
Okay. We have to be sure. We have to see that it's very maybe at least I would say before the layrage, it's good to have also to measure, to take some blood samples and to see if how is the bird, if are stressed through the biochemical, of course, analysis. By also we can measure heart rate and temperature, body temperature is good to do it, because after the slaughter, after the bird are slaughtered, there is we can see only we can measure on only the carcass condemnation. So if we have problems with some, for example, pulse of the exudation, exudative stress, and other lesions.
Okay, I think the others are more for the general discussion. I guess I would decide. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And then I think we open the general discussion. And I know that Frank have been quite active in reading and giving some comment there. So maybe Frank, is there any of the questions you have received that you would like to elaborate on?
Well, there was a question about the recommendation for the transport regulation regarding the catching by two legs, and I thought this might be maybe a good topic to discuss in this general discussion. And I think the question was, is that really an improvement compared to one leg catching? My personal opinion is that it is an improvement to manual catching, to one leg catching. So by holding at least the pain and the strain will be distributed over two legs instead of just one leg. And part of the recommendation is also to support the breast and to support some of the weight of the animal hanging down by supporting it with the knee or so of the catcher. So these are improvements. I'm still concerned personally about how uncomfortable it is for the birds to be inverted in that inverted position. And a second concern is that I think there have been studies that compared the time efficiency of upright catching, one leg catching, and two leg catching, and the least time efficient was the two leg catching. So if there is a lot of concern for upright catching about the time efficiency, which I understand, I think there should be at least as much concern about the time efficiency for two leg catching, because grabbing each animal by both legs will be quite tricky. And so I'm concerned about the time efficiency, or it won't be applied as the transport regulation imposes. And because it is hard to do inspections on that and to be sure whether each animal is caught by both legs instead of one leg. So it is a method that is hard to do inspections on by the authorities.
Thank you. Manja, do you have a comment to that?
To the two-leg catching?
Yeah, one versus two-leg catching.
From the industry perspective, how far we got actually, people try to avoid just general discussion of this. And I was just in contact with the industry partner. Now they're really eager to push the farmers towards mechanical catching strategies. So about the manual catching, I'm afraid that perhaps in the future, I doubt that there will be a great interest still, because also Zoe and myself try to stress out, I think we should also target the welfare of the farmers and the operators. And I think the future will go in this direction.
Zoe, would you like to comment on what Manja said?
Yes, I agree with Manja, because always when I'm going to see how during the night the member crew go to do this hard work, really I don't want to do it, really. It's really hard. And nowadays it's always hard to find that person that they know the language. So, for example, Greek, they come from India, from Pakistan, from other places of the world. So we have always to continue training them. It's not so easy. So maybe we have to think about the sustainability also, and of the farms, but also the welfare of the people.
Thank you. Julia or Margaret, is there a question you would like to bring into this discussion? Margaret?
Yeah, one of the participants was wondering how to prevent the spread of diseases when you're using the machines, as they usually go to several farms. And how do you then make sure you can disinfect it correctly without destroying technology or electronic parts?
Thank you for that very useful question. This company has dealt with this issue for several years, and so far they have managed it really, really good. So there was no destruction of the equipment, neither any of the farmers encounter any disease outbreak. So, but it is true that when an individual farmer is planning to start with the catching, there is a really strict program within the company who then decides at what time certain machine is going to be used. So they are really careful. There is enough time in between to really decrease the possible outcome of any disease spread.
I have a question in regard of that. In some countries, thinning is occurring. Do they have special conditions or requirements for when machines are used for thinning? Because then the risk of contamination might be even higher.
Higher. That I'm not really aware of how they are doing. What I can only say, because this is what I know, is that so far they have been always able to somehow overcome it. But for the details, I should come back to you, because my colleague is really working in the field with that, and that is really concrete questions. So if you are really kind to bear this in mind and share it with me after the presentation, I will be able to provide as soon as possible the feedback. So sorry for this now.
Yeah. Frank, did you look at the biosecurity as well?
No, that was not really included in our study. No.
Do you have a comment on the biosecurity and disinfection?
Okay, biosecurity, I think, is a big word. So we have to think always for biosecurity from the first day, maybe from the day before the placement. Always we talk about biosecurity. And these machines, as all the machines, must be well cleaned and disinfected and go around the farms, as also the personnel, the workers must be well dressed, well cleaned. So it's, I think this is a big topic, biosecurity. But we want to think that everything goes well.
Thank you. Margaret, please, another one. Or Frank, did you want to comment? Or
no, I just want to say, like, of course, there's a trade-off. The machinery itself could be a risk factor for biosecurity, but on the other hand, your catching team can be reduced by half almost, or even more if you use mechanical catching. So there will be fewer people, and each person extra to the catching team in itself may also pose a small risk for biosecurity. So how do you balance that? So it's not so straightforward, I think.
Then there is another question. Have equipment manufacturers been included and consulted as stakeholder in all the studies that you are presenting? And that's also in line with another worry that mainly older equipment have been used and not the most recent machines.
If I may comment here, the machineries that we purchase, we did it in the last 3 years. And it's true that the manufacturer, so the Italian manufacturer started that, I believe, 20 years ago, and they have updated it constantly. But as I mentioned, so from the Slovenian industry point of view, after having been consulted with several, they somehow decided for this one as being the most efficient, and it works. Perhaps it's not the latest version, but it really works, and it provides a really crucial welfare benefits for both the farmers and the animals. But as I said, yes, from the environmental perspective, hopefully, if anybody of you knows of an upgraded machinery that overcomes also this challenge, that may be really beneficial for us. But as far as I know, our industry partner hasn't found it yet, but perhaps it is somewhere out there.
Right, I can also comment from our study. We simply use the machinery that is used by the catching team willing to cooperate in the study. So that was the Apollo machine. So, but I do agree that our results only are valid for that type of mechanical catching, and it would be very interesting and useful to see whether more modern and new kind of mechanical harvesters provide better results or not. So it would be very interesting to do so, and but it was not possible in our study.
Zoe, would you like to comment on this as well?
I was thinking maybe in Manja, because it's very interesting. Manja, do you try to calculate the stress maybe after creating, so after the mechanical machine, just to see and to compare with the manual?
Zoe, as mentioned during my presentation, I mean, in Slovenia, this is the first study that the industry and academia is working extremely closely to each other. So far we have no data available, and so I cannot show anything. So what we have now is just the job satisfaction and the production data that are showing the benefits from the farmers as well as from the industry. So this is the fact. This is the reality.
Thank you so much. But it's very interesting, just to see and to compare, in the future.
Yes.
Margaret, please.
There was also some worries about upright catching taking longer. And it's not only that the catching might take a bit longer, but also then the waiting time for the birds that are already in the truck. So maybe some of the speakers can comment on that, on how you can reduce stress there, or how you can reduce this time.
We start with Frank, Manja, and Zoe. Please, Frank.
That is indeed a concern, and I think I raised that concern as well. With upright catching, we have to be careful and take measures so that the total duration of the catching event doesn't take longer. And of course, that's difficult to achieve because the catching itself is less efficient. So solutions to that is try to be more organized, involve more people if possible, organize these people well, or use smaller transportation units so they don't have to wait till the 20,000 chicken to arrive, but only wait for a full truckload at 10,000 chickens, maybe not 20,000. These are possibilities, and I think it is especially a concern when weather conditions are bad. And when it's too hot or too cold, then it could be especially a concern, and then precautionary measures need to be taken, I think, to avoid birds in the truck waiting for too long. But yeah, it's not so easy for the catching teams to recruit more people because it's not such an attractive job. So maybe by improving the labor conditions or making the job more attractive, maybe also financially, could help to motivate people to do this kind of job. So if that is really the kind of bottleneck. But I also want to stress that in situations where the weather conditions are not so bad, I think the most stressful stage during the whole event of catching is when they're actually being caught and handled and then crated. I think that's the most stressful stage. Once they are crated and once they are loaded into a truck, the stress level is still high and it's still a welfare concern, but not as high as during the time they're being handled. And with the upright method, this period of being handled is shorter than with the inverted method. So again, it's a difficult balance between the total duration of waiting before being transported to the slaughterhouse and the actual duration in that moment that is the most stressful, namely when the bird is being handled.
Manja, please.
I would claim from the industry perspective, since from day one of the fattening, their major risk is actually that the costs get higher. I don't think that they will agree for this upright catching. The cost will be higher. There will be, as mentioned, much more people involved that we cannot find. And these are the people with really low salaries. In Slovenia, there are usually older people that are already in pension, that have really low motivation to do anything. So I don't think that this is something useful for the future. I'm sorry. What I have heard and how it all works, and the economics is one of the priorities. I don't think that perhaps we don't even need to think too much about the manual catching, but perhaps to find solution for mechanical catching, what we can improve in this regard. What kind of stables do we need? I think with that kind of attitude, mentality, and a lot of research in regards to this, focusing on both animal welfare benefits and the farmer, I think this is the way to go. I think I would conclude this.
Zoe, please.
Okay, if I can I have to compare from inverted by one leg and then go inverted by two legs and then by surrounding the breast and then arrive to the machine. Maybe I would prefer machines, but okay, in my country it's not so easy here to use these machines. Maybe because of the farms, the design of the farms, and all these things that also Manja said before. I think maybe in the future we have to think about, I don't know, with this AI, the robots, everything. Maybe we have to think better solution, easy solution, also for us. I hope for this. But here I have to say also in Greece, we use the catching by legs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Margaret, yet another question.
Yeah, in line with mechanical catching, that it should be promoted, there's a more practical question, how you identify the unfit animals, as usually the catchers do that.
They don't. Usually they don't. They just collect if there is any dead individual. As I mentioned, there might be some injuries during the catching process, but if an individual doesn't die, then it goes directly to the truck and to the slaughter line. So, but then at the slaughter, so we have the records of how many animals have been transported, right? So at the slaughterhouse, you can see how many animals died during transportation. But as mentioned, it could be this also linked to this catching process. So the answer is no, we are not doing that. But we collect the data of the death individuals that may be also caused by this catching method. But if I may also here add, when comparing these farms with the others, with the manual catching, the death rate or the injuries, as mentioned, they are below the standard. So it's the same level of injuries and deaths or even lower, because the farmers here are much more aware of the conditions they need to provide for the machine to operate best possible. So they're really highly motivated. And this is also something that we are lacking by the catchers with low salaries and low motivation. So also here you can see the differences in the attitude of humans that perhaps can be transferred to the animals.
If I may,
yeah, Frank, please. Yep.
Yes. In my experience, I've seen very few of the catching team doing inspections of fit for transport. If they do it, it's on a very basic level, and they predominantly rely on the farmer to do a fitness for transport check shortly before the catching event. And that thing should be the same for manual or mechanical catching. I think that is not really the big difference, I think. I think one issue that hasn't been tackled yet is what is the social license to operate like we are doing at the moment? What does the average citizen think about these catching methods? And I don't know how they would compare mechanical compared to manual catching and things like that. But it's also a topic maybe that should be addressed and should be part of a discussion.
Zoe, please.
What can I say? I hope for the future to have better things, because really, I'm really worried about the meat quality and about the also not only the okay, I'm a veterinarian. I'm worrying about the animal welfare, but also about the human welfare. So I would like just to say this for this question. Yeah.
So I think we are very close to finishing this. I would like to ask Manja, Frank, and Zoe if there is any final thing you wanted to say, but you didn't have the time, but now you have the time, and it can't be too long. So please, Manja.
What I have learned today and in previous years is actually we need to work as researchers more closer with the industry to merge different approaches, and as Zoe said, to create a better world for both broilers and for humans.
Frank, please.
Yes, I think the future also is partly depends on the design of the stables and the infrastructure, keeping in mind that these birds will need to be removed in an efficient and humane way at the end of the production cycle. And I think there's a lot of improvement that could be done in the building of new stables that take that design criterion better into account, so that machineries can easily access those birds. And I think mechanical catching has been around for so many years and still not so popular in my country. So why is that? What are the constraints? We need to have a better view. So we need to optimize the mechanical catching for both the human and the animal, and by adapting also the buildings to that.
Thank you. Zoe, please.
Yes, I would like just to summarize from my two perfect speakers already talk about the topic of catching, either manual or mechanical catching. I would like just to say thank you for this experience, and because we exchange a lot of information, a lot of thoughts, and I would like to say that I hope for a better future, because we have to feed animal and humans. And I would like just to say to think about better solution always, and to collaborate. I hope for the collaboration of the institutes, like on university, and the companies, the industries, for better solution, because I think that till now we don't have the better solution for this.
Thank you very much. And then I would like to say thank you to Zoe, to Manja, and to Frank. And I also want to thank the BroilerNet team with Julia, Margaret, and Vibke that has been preparing and doing all the stuff for this webinar. Julia, there will be a new BroilerNet webinar. I'm not sure we have the full information, but do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I think there will be a new webinar for the topic sustainability, environmental sustainability on the 8th of July. I think it's only 1 hour, and you can register on LinkedIn. You can find the event on LinkedIn, BroilerNet, and there you can register. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. And there will be more webinars from BroilerNet coming up. And this was a joint production by aWISH and BroilerNet, which is very nice. This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, as Humphrey Bogart says in Casablanca ending scene. Thank you all. And my clock is 12 o'clock sharp. I promised you that we should finish now. So thank you all for attending this, and thank you for sharing your knowledge within this interesting topic. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.